It's time to live life through the eyes of fit people so that you too can live a fit life yourself. This is Fit Because. I'm one of your hosts, Jennifer Zerling, but you can call me Jay-Z. I'm a fitness and age management expert, author, speaker, as well as an international health advocate.
And I'm your other host, George Beater. I'm an entrepreneur, cattle rancher, fitness enthusiast, and a 6-time rodeo champion who has a huge amount of knowledge to share with you in the area of self-improvement.
Oh, he does. Get ready to learn how to bridge the gap between knowing what to do and doing what it takes to become physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, and financially fit.
You ready, Jay-Z?
Oh, I'm ready, George.
Let's dive in.
And we're back to another episode here. I'm Jay-Z, and we got George to my right, and we are super excited to talk about the laws of compensation and giving more than what you expect in return and putting it out there in the universe so that the world can bless you with amazing things. So I know you have so much to talk about on this, and I look forward to integrating some of my thoughts on this topic because living a life that's just full of giving is probably one of the most biggest blessings that I could even think of.
Yeah. And, it's another equalizer talking about this topic because we do have things in common. There are things that make us different, which is great. That's the diversity and the juice of life, is having all this diversity around us as individuals and as communities. But also there are things that are common among us. One of those things that are common is that we all want to be happy. We all are born with the desire to be happy. And so the law of compensation, grasping that law, believing in that law, and living your life according to that law allows you to be happy. And so that's the goal of this podcast, is that there will be maybe some thoughts that will be accepted by whoever listens to this that will lift them and help them be happier people. And then we'll say mission accomplished.
And I think everyone deserves to be happy. So let's start with that because obviously we're living in a rough time now and there's a lot of negativity circulating. And a lot of people feel like, hey, if I do this, then I should get something in return for that. So how do we first stop that mindset and get people on track to doing things from the goodness of their heart without expecting something immediately in return?
Sure. To give a little foreground to our discussion today, Ralph Waldo Emerson, he was a philosopher and a journalist and lecturer in the 1800s. He was born in 1803 and died in 1880. And he published 1,500 different lectures.
Wow,
most of them on natural law.
Yeah.
And in how the universe works and how human beings operate under these laws. Some laws we all accept and we know they're part of everybody's life. We understand law of gravity, right? We understand. There's some of the laws are more obvious than others.
Because we can't change them.
But this universe operates on a set of invisible laws that we become aware of as we go through our life, and we see cause and effect, and then we can identify the law, right? Yeah. And so that's how Newton discovered, and Franklin and all the great inventors discovered these things. They were there already. The concept of electricity, Marconi's ideas on sound waves and creating communication through ultimate radio waves, and all these different natural laws that people have harnessed for the progression and evolvement of our society and the way that we live. It's by observation. And so the law of compensation is one of these laws that Emerson became aware of through the course of his life and through observation of other people's lives. And then he thought deeply about it, and he wrote an essay, and it became very famous. It's famous today. You can Google law of compensation Emerson. Yeah, and you can get the whole lecture, and which I would encourage everybody to do.
Right, is to read that. But how did he stumble upon it? Is there a way to summarize how he stumbled upon that law of compensation?
Sure, and basically it's cause and effect. And so we use a lot of different, or we are familiar with sayings that would actually come around to the same concept, like what goes around comes around, right? Mm-hmm. Like somebody does something negative to you or negative to somebody else that you observe. Yeah. And then you might say to yourself, or hear somebody say, well, don't worry, what goes around comes around. Right. Or the law of karma. Yeah. Right? That
all the time I hear that.
So the universe seeks justice. And in the law of the sower, what you reap that's what you will, or what you sow, that's what you will reap, rather, right?
Yeah.
And so that's the law of compensation. So there's two themes that I would like to discuss today, and then I'll give you some ideas based on my personal experience of how that's been a blessing to me.
I would love that.
Number one, as far as in trying to move towards that goal of making us all happier, which is a common objective to being human, is if we believe in the law of compensation, we don't worry about people being punished for bad things, right? Because all of us have moments where we feel bitter about something,
Right.
a perceived injustice, right? Somebody treated us badly, or we were not rewarded for effort that we put out towards something, or whatever. We feel unappreciated. We feel harmed in some way. And in the short game, yeah, there are injustices.
Yeah.
But if you believe in the law of compensation, ultimately, in the long game, everything is made as it should be, where there is the cause and effect to everything that happens in life. And so the law of compensation says you don't have to worry about judging other people. You don't have to wish bad things on people that have maybe harmed you.
So then does it, to that point, is it even necessary for someone to reflect what goes around comes around? Like, do we have to say that, or should we say something like they say in Texas, God bless your heart?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's almost like I wish you
Well,
prayer
I
heal.
think both of those thoughts
Yeah,
should be a part of the way that we operate, right? Because
Yeah.
then we can let it go,
right. And that's, I guess, the
right?
number one thing
So
is to let it go.
bitterness, right?
Yeah.
Things that we hold in our heart, bitterness that we choose to hang on to, or resentments,
Yeah,
those things canker our soul. They poison us, right?
right.
Like resentment, you've heard the saying probably, resenting somebody or seeking revenge is drinking poison that you want someone else to be affected by.
Right. I agree with that
But you're drinking
wholeheartedly.
the poison, right?
Yeah.
So we can let go of those things that make life more miserable for us because we're feeling bitter about a perceived injustice. We can just let it go if we ponder upon and accept the law of compensation
So-
and just let it go and know it's going to be made right.
Take someone through that exercise right there. Let's
Yeah,
pause,
yeah.
because for us, we totally get it. But someone really got wronged.
Yeah.
Someone feels extremely hurt. Someone feels very down in the dumps. How should, like, what's that very first step to getting that law of compensation into their, into their being, into their practice right then and there, and trusting that it even exists for them when they've never tried this before?
Okay, well, I can give you an example. Just as you say that, my mind is flooded with personal experiences I've had where I've
Yeah.
been wronged, right? We've all have. So it's not
Share
woe is me.
away.
I mean, but I'll just give you one example.
Okay.
I was where I live up on top of a mountain on a cattle ranch, right? That I purchased years ago.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of infrastructure spending that goes in when you think about building on a big piece of property. It's not the cost of the house. It's like, finding water, drilling a well, paying for PG&E to come in from miles away,
Yeah.
building roads, the county specs and Caltrans specs. I mean, it's just
The inspections alone are
it's
insane.
there's a lot of infrastructure that goes on, right?
Yeah.
And so being new, I hadn't built a home on a piece of raw property like this before. I'd owned other homes, multiple other homes, but not in this. Anyway, so one of the things I did is I built this road, and from where the highway is, and from that point, which is Highway 41 going to Yosemite, going up to the top of the mountain where I live is exactly 2 miles, and we go from 2,000 feet to 3,400 feet.
Oh, wow.
So we have a lot of pitch that we climb, right? So to build a road, engineer a road that is county spec, right? It can only be so steep, and in order to get blue tagged or get approved by the county where I live, it was a lot of engineering, a lot of building. So I built this road, or I had this road built,
Right.
and then I paved it, right? 2 miles of paved road. So my driveway is a long paved driveway, very expensive, right? Several $100,000 to do this.
Right.
Well, I had one part of the road that failed the first winter, had some blowouts and things. So I had to have it rebuilt completely, and it was, so
How much of a stretch was that?
it was about a third of
Oh, wow.
the road. So it was a big chunk.
Yeah.
And anyway, not that that's that important. So I hired a guy to do the work. in the community that I knew. So I'd never worked with him professionally.
Yeah.
I just liked the guy as a person, my limited involvement. He would be an acquaintance, not a close friend, right? But I
Okay.
always whenever I have work to do, I mean, I want to give the work to somebody that I know I want it to benefit them, right?
Yeah.
So I've always been that way.
Loyalty.
Right. I'm that guy. So I hire this guy to do, and so I have him give me an estimate. He tells me, okay, it's going to be between $70,000 and $100,000, which is pretty wide. But I'm like, okay,
Okay. That is pretty wide.
yeah.
Okay.
I said that's fine.
But you trusted him.
I
so,
trust the guy.
Okay.
Yeah. So he went at the project. So he goes ahead and he tears up all the asphalt, grinds it up, restructures the road, and then pours new asphalt. Anyway, he fixes this big stretch of driveway for me. And so when the job's done, I go, okay, his
Quanto
first name,
cuesta?
right? I go, what do I owe you? And he, of course, it was 100,000, right?
Right.
The very high end of the bid, which is fine. So great. So I wrote him a check, right? Deal done.
Yeah.
Okay. A couple months later, I get a call from this, from Sunbelt Equipment, which is a rental company. They rent huge equipment.
Mm-hmm.
So he was renting, a lot of these big machines he
Yeah.
needed to do the job, and he wasn't paying them. And the way it works in California here is the landowner is responsible, because a company like that does a big job for you, even though you paid the other guy for the work, they can put a mechanic's lien on your property to make sure they get paid.
Did you sign paperwork and stuff like that? Like, how does that, was there anything formalized, or you just trusted the guy and said,
I just trusted the guy.
okay,
Yeah.
wow,
Yeah.
okay.
Anyway, but that is the way it is. That's the way, if someone builds you a house, it's the same
Yeah.
thing. If you hire a contractor and you pay him $1 million to build you a house,
Yeah.
and he doesn't pay a sub, the sub can file a mechanic lien on your property to
Yeah.
make sure he gets paid.
Right.
And the guy just, screwed you.
Ran
That
away.
happens, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, I don't want to make this too long. Bottom line is, I start getting calls from this guy in Chicago. He's a collection attorney. I mean, like mafia sounding guy, and he's like harassing me, telling me that
Give me my money.
that this bill was never paid, $26,000, $27,000, and that if I don't pay it immediately, that he's going to exercise the mechanic lien and he's going to force the sale of my ranch, right? So I'm like, I call, of course, this guy, the contractor, and I go, dude, I just got a call from the equipment rental
Yeah.
place, and they're like, want to exercise a lien. So I explained the situation. Of course, the guy's like, oh, no. I'll take care of that. I'm paying him. Don't worry about it. I got it. Sorry that you got that call. It was that kind of thing. Bottom line is, I kept getting the calls, and he didn't. And then he finally wrote a check to the people, and it bounced. Then they wanted to put him in jail,
Oh,
or
wow.
threatening to put him in jail. So
What a disaster.
so bottom line,
Yeah.
I could either let this eat me up and fight this war that I was never going to win, right? Or I could just let it go.
And you paid.
Yeah. So I went ahead and I sent the $27,000 to Sunbelt.
So the gig was $127,000.
Yeah. So anyway, so then I just asked to have lunch with this contractor. I just wanted to clear it with him, right? Because he's in my community.
So you
I don't
wanted
want him ducking me every time I see him in
Yeah.
town, and
You want him to be honest with you and be like,
Right.
dude, what happened?
So and he never took responsibility. I mean, like at lunch, he told me this. He goes, "Well, really, the job just cost me more, and you were holding me to the bid, so it's your fault." I mean,
Wow.
anyway, so that was his posture. So I just said, "Look," I go, "Here's the deal. I'm a business person. You're a business person. I have more experience than you, and I make millions of dollars a year. I'm good at what I do. So I'm just going to tell you this out of my life experience. Never do this again. I'm going to clear the debt. I don't want you to pay me back. We're calling it even. I paid your bill, and it's over. I'll never bring it up to you again, ever. I won't circulate this through town. This is done.
And I won't hire
Forgiveness.
you again.
I'm just canceling this. It's over, right?
Right.
I said, but I want you to consider the lesson here. If you will be an honorable human, and you will do what you say you're going to do, you always will prosper, because these things, this law of compensation, I tried to explain to him.
So you did explain this to him.
I did. I said, it will catch up with you, and I'm letting you off the hook. But this
But
doesn't,
someone else won't.
this doesn't mean that you're going to be able to do this to other people and continue to operate normally.
Right.
This is going to ruin you at some point unless you change the way you think and deal with people. And I just canceled the debt, and that was it. And I was free of it. And unless I was thinking of an example today, I haven't thought about it in years. That's it.
Isn't that amazing?
And I've done that with many, many people.
Right.
I've just forgiven them their debts. I don't want to deal with that. I don't want to be bitter. And it releases it from me. I don't walk around harboring that. Right. I didn't let that make me an acidy person. It didn't change me. It didn't slow me down. Right.
It weighs you down otherwise.
It does. It does. The woe is me mentality cripples souls, and I'm just not going to go there, right? And in my mind, I know that it's righted, right? I gave this guy a gift. That's what I gave him, right? I gave him a gift. I'm not doing that for a reward, but I know that the universe, according to the law of compensation, which I adhere to and believe in, will seek equilibrium. And I'll be made right, and he'll be made right. I don't have to worry about judging him. I'll just let it go and move on, charge towards my goals.
Yeah, and other people will make out because he won't do that again, hopefully, and you've actually taught him a valuable lesson.
I hope so. Eventually he will have to, or he won't be in the business, right?
Right, exactly.
I mean, that's the way the world works.
It's like when I managed personal trainers at the Sports Club LA years ago, I put a lot of energy into the interview process, and I brought on the best of the best, okay? And once in a blue moon, I would have a trainer just in my mind at the time wrong me by either stealing from the company, by, training under the table and doing stuff like that. And I did the same thing. And this was back in 2003, 2004. And I took them in my office as I was terminating them. And I didn't say to them, you should be ashamed of yourself. That's wrong.
Yeah.
All I said was, you know what? I'm very disappointed that I'm losing a great trainer from my team. And I really pray that you never do this again in any other job capacity.
Yeah.
Because, you're too good for this. Yeah. And I empowered that person. And I would close the door and cry when they left because I would miss them.
Yeah.
They were one of my top trainers.
Yeah.
But, it felt so freeing to be able to leave on good terms with that person who
it does.
technically wronged you.
So that's one side of that law, Jen, is the law of compensation allows you to let go of either perceived or real injustices, right?
Yeah.
And allow you to be free of them and to be happy, right?
Yes.
Because you're not cankering your soul with resentment.
Right.
The other side of the law of compensation that we need to discuss is that we need to feel free to do more than we're being paid for.
Let's talk about that.
We live in an entitlement society, right? What can you do for me? What are you going to give me, right?
What do I get out of this? What's in it for me?
And understand that part of human nature that wants something for nothing, that's a destructive part of human nature that we have to get a handle on. Otherwise, it'll limit our growth and our happiness, right?
Yeah.
Because if you believe in the law of compensation, there is no such thing as something for nothing, but everybody wants it.
But if everyone's entitled, like not everyone, but if people are entitled, how do they recognize that they're one of those people that need to shift gears and not feel that entitlement?
Well, what I would hope is that if you're listening to this podcast or watching this podcast, I would hope that you would give this some thought and then read the law of compensation, and you tell me what your soul, what does your soul speak to you? What's truth here, right? Are you entitled just because someone has something that you don't have? Or are you entitled to a piece of that without any merit? Are you entitled just because you're human for someone else to take care of you, to give you something for nothing? Now, as a society, obviously, that's a destructive thought pattern, right? Because you can't have an efficient economy with people wanting something for nothing and not giving what they're paid for, much less more than they're paid for in value, right?
Right.
So in order for us to evolve, if we subscribe to the law of compensation, or this what comes around goes around, or this, karma always happens, that type of thinking, then if we work for somebody else, or if you're just serving people in your own business, you're constantly looking for ways to add value that you're not being paid for, right? Not because you know that the world is going, or the universe is going to seek equilibrium and you're going to get yours. Not because you're not doing it for that reason. You just believe that it's always best to give more than what people are expecting, or to try to add value where it wasn't paid for, right?
Yeah.
Now, I think as an employer, right, in my little office in Fresno where I operate, I have 9 full-time employees, and I have some on the ranch. Well, I I have one employee, for example. I won't call him out because I'm not supposed to do that. But if he watches this, he'll know who I'm talking about, and he'll feel appreciated because I do appreciate it, and I tell him that.
Yes.
But he's always at work a half hour early. Always at work a half hour early, right? That half hour that he doesn't get paid for. So now I really pay him well. He's highly compensated, but he does things that other employees don't do that's noticed. So as an employer, I want to reciprocate.
Right.
I want to give him extra bonuses. And if I get like, if somebody sends me gift certificates, because I get stuff all the time, from clients, also from vendors and just people I do business with because of the volume of business I do.
Right.
I get gimmies all the time, right? If I get something, I show up to work and I've got whatever, gift certificates to a restaurant on my desk
You
that
give it
someone
to
sent
him.
me. Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
It's the law of reciprocation that plays into this law of compensation. I want to do more. He's going to get his, right? He's not doing it for that reason. It's just his habit. He likes to get to work early and get his mind settled and get focused and get organized. That's the way he operates, right? Which is a blessing to me as an employer, right?
Right.
Because
he's on your team.
Right. So I'm grateful for that.
Gosh, how do we get everyone to be like that?
Yeah, right. And when I was a little kid, I remember it made an impression on me. Um, if you've watched some of these podcasts, I grew up in the cattle business. So I grew up being a cowboy all my life. And I started working because I grew up on a small cattle ranch. My dad couldn't afford employees. So the kids, I was in the middle of 5 kids. We all worked from the time we were big enough. It's kind of like if you were old enough to get out of the truck and open a gate, you're on the payroll, but you don't get paid. That's the way it was, right?
That's where law of attraction began with you.
That's right.
Compensation.
So I worked hard, from the time I was a little kid.
Yeah.
Well, whenever we needed an extra hand, there was this guy, and I'll call him out because he's deceased now, and his memory I just want to honor. But his name is Sam Fancher, and he was Native American Indian that was just a cowboy in the truest sense. Every ideal that I think of that's positive about being a cowboy, the cowboy ethic of being honest and moral and taking care of the land and loving and honoring animals and all the stuff that real cowboys do, what I grew up wanting to be,
is him.
Was embodied in Sam Fancher. I loved him. And just backstory, and then we got to move on. But he died several years ago now, probably, I don't know, maybe 15 years ago.
How old was he?
He was in his late 80s. I believe he was 88.
Full life.
And when I was a kid, he was in his 70s, and he was still just an incredible hand. If we had to have an extra hand outside of the kids to do a project on the ranch, we'd always hire Sam.
Right.
And if we were going to start gathering cows, be on horseback and gathering cows at 5 a.m, he would be there at 4:30, always. In fact, it'd be dark, because we'd start right at sunlight. That's where you kind of do cattle work, because when it's cool enough in the summer where they want to move and stuff, you gotta get a lot done in the cooler parts of the day, right? Late day in the early. That's just cattle work in summer hot areas. Anyway, Sam, so he would be sleeping in his truck at the bottom of the driveway on the way into where the corrals were, where our horses were kept. And when we would get up and start down the hill, every time he would be there. He'd been there for a half hour or an hour.
Yeah.
Because it was his ethic. He was always going to give more than he was being paid for.
Very reliable.
That's one of the little, examples I think of. And just to honor Sam, which I just love that man. Always did my whole life. And he liked me and his kids. And because he was old, he was in his 70s and he was still super sharp, but he'd tell me these stories. He'd lived an incredible life. He grew up on a reservation in Arizona, real poor, bunch of kids trying to make a living in the cattle business down there on the desert. And he had a lot of really cool experiences. And he was a rodeo cowboy, rodeoed for a living for years and years. And he'd tell me his stories over and over and over again. And I remember I'd never tell him, "Oh, Sam, you've already told me that
already."
I just listened to him over and over. I couldn't get enough of him, when I was a little kid. I just loved that guy. Just before he died, one of the little moments I'm grateful for, he lived in Raymond, which is, I don't know, about 15 miles from where I live, south. And I was going, I'm an adult now, and I'm in a suit and tie and in a nice car going to a business meeting. And I'm going through Raymond that way to Highway 99. And I see Sam, who's in his 80s now. People were still paying him to go look after their cattle. And I saw his rig, so I recognized his horse trailer and his truck pulled off the side of the road. And I figured, oh, that's got to be Sam, and he's got to be checking somebody's cattle there, you know. So I was late to well, not late, but I needed to clip along. I thought, no, I'm stopping. I haven't seen him in years, and I need to see him,
Yeah.
So I remember I pulled over in my suit and tie, and I saw him riding out in the field, and I yelled at him and called him over, and he rode his horse over, and we had a really neat moment, where he wanted to know how I was doing, and I found out how he was doing, and we just kind of communed together for a few minutes, and just told him how much I appreciated him, how I felt about him, and I was off. And then he died a short time later.
Oh gosh, imagine you didn't have that
Oh
moment.
yeah, and I went to his funeral, and I was like, I am so grateful that I listened to that little voice, that little sixth sense
to stop.
that told me to do that. I'm just grateful. That's one of the little things I'm.
It's so cool though. Like this guy is a legend to you, and even though no one in the world knows him but you, your family, and the people that were impacted by him, could you imagine the people listening to this podcast can actually be a legend for people in their lives just by stepping it up and really believing this law of compensation.
I will tell you that in my house, I only have one picture of somebody outside of my family and loved ones, and that's Sam Fancher.
Oh.
And of him riding a bucking horse in Prescott, Arizona in
See the
1930.
tears in the eyes.
I just love him. But he lived the law of compensation. I guess that's why it relates to this theme, and that's why that resonates in me when we talk about it, or his memory resonates in me, because he always did more than paid for. It was never, it's 5 o'clock, I'm leaving.
Yeah.
Or it's 5 o'clock in the morning, I'm showing up right now because that's when I'm supposed to be here. It was always, if you need me to do 8, I'm going to do 10, right? That's just, and that's the way he lived his life.
Yeah.
So he had a reputation. I don't know anybody that would ever say anything bad about Sam Fancher because he lived this law. And that's part of the reward that he received. I don't know what else blessed him. I know that the universe takes care of people that live their life adding value and giving more than they're paid for and not being entitled about anything.
Yeah. It's an
Gosh,
honor.
I could spend the rest of our time just talking about Sam Fancher, but I can't.
It's an honor, but what's really cool is if you let's be very clear here. We're not saying if you're an employee just stick around at work and be overworked by your boss just to prove that you have a law, you believe in the law of compensation. But it's when you're at your job, even if you show up a few minutes earlier, it's being super productive and positioning yourself to be trusted by the people that you work for.
Yes.
And even if you're an entrepreneur, same thing. As an independent contractor, I have to constantly go above and beyond, not because I have to, but because I want to.
Yep.
I have this deep-rooted passion in my heart for what I do. And when I light people up, it just tickles my soul, and it gives me that infinite level of purpose.
Absolutely.
So.
Absolutely. Well, I think my feeling as far as being overworked, I think believing in the law of compensation, one of two things is going to happen. If you're being abused at work, let's say you're being underpaid for what you do, one or two things is going to happen if you believe in this law. Either your opportunity is going to expand and you're going to get the promotion you deserve or get the opportunity you're going to deserve, or another opportunity comes along.
Leave.
It's going to work for you. You're going to be blessed
Either way.
either direction. Not always in what we perceive it's going to be, but it's going to happen if you believe in the law, right?
Yeah.
And I believe in the law. I trust in the law. So I put myself out there. I'm never afraid to give pro bono work to clients,
Right.
to just do things for them without any hope of compensation. I do that constantly. And I'm not trying to sainthood myself because I'm the last person to do that. Trust me, I have way more faults than I have virtues. I'm just saying that I believe in that law. I trust in that law, and it's easy for me to live. I never have to worry about, okay, well, what am I going to get when we're talking about benefiting somebody, right?
Right.
Just give more, know that the universe is going to make it right with you, and let go of any harm or of anything that's been done to you that's unjust in your mind, because the universe is going to take care of that, right?
Yeah.
You don't have to be judge and jury. You just let it go.
And verbalize it. I'm going to let this go because this is out of my control. I don't want to hold on to this. Say it out loud, because saying it out loud physically convinces yourself to let it go, and all the things that George is saying. So I agree with you wholeheartedly. And
totally agree. Yeah, totally agree. Yeah. And then tell the person, letting this go. I'm not going to talk about it anymore. Yeah.
Let's move forward.
I'm letting it go. And so release people.
Now
release
Now
people.
what if the people don't want to be released?
Well, that's all. You've done what you can do. You're still
Okay.
gonna have that law work for you.
Okay. So don't
And
worry about others.
unfortunately, they're going to bring a penalty upon themselves according to the law, right?
That's right.
So unfortunately, in fact, it's interesting. My sweet girlfriend's right here, and she reminds me that the people that maybe wrong you in life, when we talk about something negative that's happened, she reminds me, pray for that person.
Mm-hmm.
Pray for that person.
That's right.
And
It feels good.
and it does feel good. It does feel good. And if you believe in the law of compensation, then you can sincerely do that, not just out of some type of moral obligation,
Right.
but because that's going to release you, and that whatever penalty they're bringing upon themselves because of their activity, that they have that to pay, and you don't want anybody to hurt. Hopefully we don't want anybody to suffer. And so we can sincerely do that, and then it does let it go, and it does elevate. So I'm grateful for her example in
Yeah.
that way.
And hopefully that person heals, because obviously we don't wish harm on people,
Right.
because people are, the higher powers
Yeah.
kids, and we never want to disrespect those people.
That's
so
right. That's right.
I agree
So
with
live
that.
the law of compensation. What comes around goes around. You
Yeah.
reap what you sow, right? Live your life for the extra mile,
Yeah.
the extra mile principle, right?
Yeah.
Give a little bit more. Do what you're asked to do, and a little bit more. Treat people good, and a little bit more. And know that you will always be in a state of evolution, and your happiness will compound. God bless us to do that.
That's right. Make people feel important, because you are important too.
That's it.
This has been Fit Because, hosted by Jennifer Zerling.
And George Veter. Be sure to follow us on social media at Fit Because Show on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook.
And for past episodes, be sure to visit our website at fitbecause.com.
Also, please subscribe to our show on iTunes, and be sure to rate and comment. You may always request topics for our subsequent episodes.
And if you love this episode, please share it with someone you love, so that we can continue spreading our mission to help people be fit.
Until next time, take care of yourself, and know that your future is
Fit because.